It's time for Casey Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice, and we're telling the stories of Kansas City nonprofits and the people behind them. Well, Casey Cares is the intersection of the nonprofit and profit communities, making KC a better place to live, work, and play. This Casey Care segment is brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation, www.kauffman.org. It's a new year, and what better way to start it off than having a conversation with Casey Care's own Dr. Philanthropy, Jeffrey Byrne, CEO and co-founder of Byrne Pelofsky Associates, which is a full-service fundraising consulting firm, one of the top in the region and, dare I say, country. Today's topic, we're going to talk a little fundraising strategy as we move into this New Year's. Welcome back, Dr. Philanthropy.
Good morning, Ruth, and how are your holidays?
They were terrific. We're rolling back now into the excitement of the nonprofit world. We're all refreshed, right? The holidays are over. Might have a little holiday hangover, but all right. So how do we start? Where do we go? What are the key things we need to be considering as we move into Q1 and beyond?
Sure. Well, I want to welcome everyone back to work after hopefully what was a rewarding and prosperous end of 2024. Because, probably for a lot of the organizations that are listening to nonprofits that are listening to this broadcast, Ruth, perhaps they're small to medium nonprofits, and they receive perhaps 50% of their donations at the end of the last quarter of 2024. So the November, December is a very active month for most nonprofits. They are receiving gifts. They are banking money. They are sending out thank you letters and just really doing really hard work for sustainability of their nonprofits. So as we look into as we are in now 2025, and we look to what we need to do for this year, I would hope that they have already prepared for this time. But like myself and many others, we're probably jumpstarting and running to keep up right now. So, as I think about jumpstarting your fundraising plan as a nonprofit and your fundraising, that is, as a nonprofit, I think, the number one thing that you have to do really is to identify what projects you want to raise dollars around. So, I think that goes back to perhaps talking to your program staff, talking to those who are actual service providers, and determining which projects and programs that you want to put in front of donors, whether they be corporate, individual, foundations, during this calendar year 2025. So I think the first thing to do is to identify the projects that are worthy of the fundraising dollars you want to go after. I think then what you need to do is build around those programs a narrative. And
a story.
Thank you, Ruth. That's what fundraising is, isn't it? It is storytelling. And you're the best storyteller I know out there, Ruth. So,
well, thank you. But
I believe that you do need to tell the story of of projects that you are interested in. So let me give you an example. At the end of this last year, we were working with Inclusion Connections out of Olathe, Kansas, on a $20+ million capital project. And as we tell our story about building independent living for individuals with intellectual disabilities and special needs, we talk about Matthew, who works at Inclusion Connections, who puts together He puts together, he helps in their training of other special need individuals, whether they be autistic or Down syndrome. And they have a skills training program called Pause Abilities, and they produce peanut butter flavored, of which you can eat too, Ruth, dog treat. And at my dog daycare, Camp Bow Wow, they sell these as an enterprise. So it's a private enterprise, but it drops to the line of about $300,000 to $500,000 a year for
Wow.
connections. So what we want to do is talk about Matthew, and having graduated high school 10 years ago, he's still living at home with his mother. But Matthew wants to be independent, just like all other 28 to 30-year-olds. And, but he can't afford a $4,000 or $5,000 a month rental. And but he needs extra help, and he needs support services around him. So what Inclusion Connections is doing is wrapping around services in a new residential facility that is affordable housing for individuals with special needs. And so we talk about that. We talk about Matthew. So I think that as we are identifying projects and that we are programs that are fundraising around, whether that be operational for your bottom line or it be capital, that you've got to have a narrative and you've got to be able to tell your story.
So really doing that hard work, if you haven't got it already lined up, to find those stories that resonate. What about a nonprofit that maybe is shifting kind of their priorities? They're going to address more of a new program or a new direction. Is there anything extra special that they should do as they craft these stories?
Well, I think that's a really good point you bring up. And I think that as, in today's storytelling, that it's more than creating a brochure, like we used to do in the olden days, Ruth. We would create a brochure or we would create a pamphlet. And today, I think it is electronic means. We're working with a federally qualified healthcare system community, FQHC, out in Salina, Kansas. And we're helping them raise $60 million on a project. And one of the ways that we're telling the story is the old-fashioned way of a brochure, but we are also telling a story through a downloadable video that we can send out via the internet to donors to let them preview what's in the written form of the case for support or the brochure. And having that video, then that allows us to preview what we're trying to do, telling the story of Salina Family Healthcare, telling what and who and how they do the medical and healthcare services that they provide in central Kansas, and also then to help create the opportunity to frame the issues around what we're trying to do in our fundraising efforts. So I think by the electronic video, we're able to do that. Then what we can do is splice and dice, the video, and we can put it together in segments, perhaps to do social media around a TikTok version of certain parts of it, and try to raise our profile in the community. And by any time you put it on the World Wide Web, then it goes anywhere and everywhere, but we can refer to it in social media. So not only that we would have a video but we could have a video that could be spliced and diced into other bite-sized biteable chunks. Now, let me say something about a video. If you're going to do a video, it needs to reflect the brand of your nonprofit. Okay.
Yes.
It does not have to be like the Nelson Atkins Art Museum, but it doesn't also need to be like it's done in your next door neighbor's basement as well. So it needs to reflect your brand. So if I were to think about doing a video with you, I would think about the brand around, your volunteerism, Ruth, your love of sports, your love of Michigan, and your love of the Jewish community as well. So we could package it like that. I think it also needs to be in a format and a time period that is an easy and quick download and understanding. So maybe 90 seconds to up to 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes is something that someone's going to look at if they're interested. Then you need to have a call to action, So as we're thinking about jumpstarting the fundraising this year, you have to create calls to action, because that call to action is the opportunity then to switch the conversation from the programs and projects that you're trying to raise money for to the actual download a document or a special button that could be pushed on the social media platform that you're using that is a landing page to a donate page. So I think that is important. Think of the ultimate goal of what you want. Is it awareness? Is it communications? Is it building momentum? Or is it also raising money?
Well, I think that's interesting. I don't know if this is you're giving a good reminder to all of us that you really need to look at all aspects of that. And it's time at the beginning of the year. You have a little bit of time as you start to weave in. I wanted to go back to a couple of comments you made about your story and how you tell that story and if the story changed. I know at the end of last year, many nonprofits were faced with the very end of COVID funds. And some nonprofits received huge amounts of money. So how do we move into this new landscape? That is completely gone now. And I think for human services or, social service oriented nonprofits, how do we face that kind of a challenge? How do you move through that narrative of I lost that money, now we're looking to how we sustain or grow?
Sure. Well, I think what you're talking about is a public source of funding. And regardless of what party you're involved in, and frankly, I don't care. We don't care as it relates to fundraising. And as we air this, there will be a new administration in 3 days on January 20th. I think that you still have to do the hard work and the good work of keeping in contact with your elected officials, because as we know, there's been a lot of money coming out of Washington, D.C. the last 4 years under the Biden administration. But if we go back and look at 17 to 20, under the Trump administration, there was tremendous spending during the Trump administration as well. So we are hopeful that our elected officials that are on the federal level, our congressmen, congresswomen, and United States senators will still have the opportunity to pick and choose on good projects that they want to support through direct funding through a congressional allocation program process. So I would still suggest that our listeners who represent nonprofits reach out to the congressman, congresswoman, or United States senator staff and make sure that they have a friend in that office, whether that be in district, here on a local level. I think you need to get to know the district office manager, or if it's also in Washington, D.C. Many times, each of the congressional or Senate offices will have a legislative assistant or a liaison who works with individuals who contact their offices. And believe me, congressional members and senators, they watch people, they watch who's contacting their office, and they are aware, because by contacting your elected official's office, you are doing more than just voting. You are actively participating in democracy and the legislative process. And we send our money to Washington, D.C. by the taxes we pay, and
Absolutely.
and we pay a lot of taxes, all of us in the United States. And so that we need to ask our elected officials to help us on project-specific requests to them. Learn what committees that they're on, whether they're on a committee in the United States Congress, or if they're on a committee in your state capital in Jefferson City or Topeka, which is close to us, Ruth, in Missouri and in Kansas. Get to know your legislators. We just had one of our colleagues, Representative Brandon Woodard of Shawnee Mission, Kansas, elected minority leader of the state house in the state house of the Kansas legislature. And we are reaching out to Representative Woodard on a project and that he has awareness of, because we've kept him involved the last 12 to 18 months. And now that we are interested in talking to him about what we should be doing in the 2025 session of the Kansas legislature around funding for this particular nonprofit. So, don't forget your state representatives who are in your state capitals. Also, don't forget the city council members, or your county legislators, county officials as well. They all have some money. And, the fallacy that there's not going to be any money coming out of Washington, D.C., I think is a fallacy. We don't exactly know how quickly decisions are going to be made in Washington that will filter down to to us, the people, and therefore we have a good 6 to 12 months, perhaps, to continue to have this dialogue, with elected officials on the local, state, or federal levels.
We're talking with Dr. Philanthropy, Jeffrey Byrne, and we're talking about fundraising strategies in the beginning of the year. You bring up a great point, and that I think probably goes across the spectrum of looking at fundraising, and that is really getting to creating relationships, talking and for example, you talked about in the political spectrum. Let's switch to the donor. What are those things at this beginning of the year that we should be paying attention to with our donors or would-be donors?
Well, number one, I think you need to thank them for their past support. You need to remind them what they did in 2024 or 2023 or 2022 or whatever. If they're lapsed donors, you've got to ask them, how do I help you to become more re-engaged in our nonprofit work and our nonprofit programs? If it's donors who have been very active with you, I would still have the conversation to say, what was your best experience that you could tell me about in 2024 with the programs and the projects that you supported at our nonprofit? I think it's opening up a dialogue with that donor. It's helping to visit with them about what worked in their what worked for them, and perhaps how can we better improve what we're doing to make for your understanding of so that you have a better understanding of who we are. I think it's also very important that each of our nonprofit staff members do the hard work of looking at each donor and each prospective donor and thoughtfully putting together a reasonable request amount. I am not a fan of going out and soliciting without an amount or a dollar figure. And whether that be a one-time donation that we ask for in direct communications or through electronic or U.S. mail, I think you've got to do the hard work. You've got to look at the donor history, the engagement, the affinity to your organization, the project that you're raising money for, and put a reasonable request there. Not many of us. I'm on a campaign committee out in Colorado where I'm on the board of a nonprofit. And we had a $10 million. We have a $72 million campaign that we're underway with. Well, one of our projects was $10 million, and the organization went out and asked the donor for $20 million for this $10 million project. And lo and behold, the donor told me that they were willing and interested in doing $5 million upfront when they were solicited and visited, because they were engaged consumers in this organization. When they were asked for $20 million, their breath was taken away. And a few weeks later, they made a decision to fund the whole program and do a $10 million donation. So,
wow.
Not many donors are going to do the whole project. That is an absurd example sometimes that I use. But whether it's a $10 million request on a project, and you ask for $20 million, or it's a $200,000 project and you request $20,000, it's all relative, and you still do it the same way. You think about how well the donor knows your organization. You reflect on a little bit about the past. You talk a little bit about what we're currently doing, and then you create that vision for what you're raising money around, and you ask for a specific dollar amount. So, if you're going to ask for a $20,000 gift on a $200,000 project, what you would do is, I would say, Ruth, we would like for you and your spouse to consider a $5,000 gift over the next 4 years for pledge of $20,000 if you have the pledge available to them, or you just ask for a one-time gift amount as well. But don't forget to ask for a specific amount of money, and don't forget to also have air in your stomach as you're starting to make that request, so you can end on a big note, and you're not just like calling like this and asking for $20,000, So I've seen it done both ways. And then shut up. Don't say a word. Make the request,
Perfect. All right. I was reading some things prepping for today and found all these little interesting ways that, for example, the rule of 7. And then there was the power of 3 and all of that. Can you address, before we close today, the importance of donor connection and the person and the listen as we go out this year into the new year?
As we are looking forward to 2025, I think that you've got to reach out, and you've got to continue to thank each donor in your a number of different ways. We can thank a donor by sending them a communications piece. That is one way of thanking them. We can update them. We can update them very specifically on perhaps a project that they had funded, one of the campaigns that we had done in 2024. Let's say we did 3 different fundraising campaigns around 3 different projects. Well, go out and tell them the results of what the results were of those projects. How were individuals, peoples, animals, art, nature, medicine, healthcare? Take any sector of the sectors that nonprofits are involved in, and go out and show the results of what you did with the donated money. Thank them. Let them know that the need never ends. I know that some donors want to flip the page and want to do something different each year. And then some donors are just going to want to give you an unrestricted gift. And we all love unrestricted gifts.
Yes, we do.
So I don't think it really matters if it's restricted or unrestricted. I think showing results of what you use money, donated dollars for, how you communicate that, and how you create a runway for 2025. Because here in January, the middle of January, that's exactly what we're doing. We are creating runways for donor options and donor gifting during this calendar year. And I hope that all of our listeners are rested and that they are prepared to really hit the road running and hit that runway and engage with those individuals, foundation leaders, or corporate leaders who gave this past year or who will maybe be on our prospect list to give in 2025.
Is this the time for nonprofits who have maybe more than, not even if they have more than one, is this the time to start, taking some webinars or classes or, I think sometimes there's a hesitation of, I don't have time to do that. Is the first quarter the time to say, yeah, take a breath? And if so, where do you look for those kinds of things?
Well, I live in Kansas City, Missouri, and we have an organization called Nonprofit Connect. And Nonprofit Connect is an excellent organization. They do educational programming all year long, all 12 months. Reach out to Nonprofit Connect. If you're part of the Association of Fundraising Professionals, seek out your local chapter and see what training opportunities AFP offers. Think about the Lilly School of Philanthropy and the Fundraising School. I just sent some of one of our clients' staff to the Lilly School. Their fundraising school, they have both webinars and they have in-person trainings throughout the United States. And it's an excellent, is probably the best resource of learning in the United States around fundraising, boardsmanship, strategic planning, developing case for support, thinking about your overall organization and the impact that you want to have. So I think, go locally, go nationally through the Association of Fundraising Professionals and the opportunities that they have for both members and non-members. And think about the fundraising school. Also think about your own universities. Many universities like my alma mater, the University of Missouri, the Truman School of Public Service, they might have opportunities for individuals. I know here at the University of Missouri in Kansas City, the Nonprofit Leadership Institute, they have ongoing webinars and educational opportunities. So take advantage of those. Look at the what you have budgeted for education and training this year and try to maximize that. I still go to as many workshops on different topics of interest, of professional interest that I have, but then to sharpen my fundraising skills so that I can better deliver consulting services and consulting practices to our nonprofit clients across the country as well.
So invest in you as the fundraiser, or even those folks within a nonprofit that support the fundraiser. It will benefit you in the long run. As always, Dr. Philanthropy, you give us the best advice. We're so glad when you join us. Thanks for taking the time to get us to sharpen our saws as we go out and continue to fundraise. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you for joining us. Happy New Year to you. And thank you for joining us on Casey Cares. We are the nonprofit voice, and we're produced by a nonprofit known as Charitable Communications. This Casey Cares segment was brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation, www.kauffman.org. To be a guest on Casey Cares, please visit our website, kccaresonline.org. And spread the love. You'll find us on Facebook and Twitter at Casey Cares Radio and Instagram at kccaresonline.org. And don't forget, you can catch us Saturday mornings on ESPN 1510 and 94.FM. Saturday mornings. Thank you for joining us on KC Cares.